Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Remember, if you love film, gaming, or television content, please consider clicking that subscribe button because today we are going to be talking about a film that I've been looking forward to for quite a while, and that is the new A24 horror film, Talk to Me. So, let's get into it. So this film was picked up by A24 at the Sundance Film Festival, where it was a smash hit and did surprisingly well overall. And my excitement grew when the first trailer released. When a horror film has the A24 name attached to it, even though sometimes they don't produce the film, they just distribute it, just that check from them in the horror genre means that you're probably going to get one of the best films in the genre, because while they can be divisive, they really strike a chord with me. Films like Hereditary, Midsommar, The Lighthouse, The Witch, so many films I just love and I think are all-time great films in the genre. So when A24 is backing a horror project, I'm always paying attention because to me they are the premier name when it comes to horror films. This film was directed by the Rucka brothers, who are YouTubers. They have a pretty big following, both Australian, which is really awesome to see. I don't know too much about them other than this film, and one of them was on the undercard for the first Logan Paul vs KSI fight, and he had one of the most awkward stare downs of all time.
Alright, that's enough, boys.
But I always think it's fascinating when there is a YouTuber deciding to go into filmmaking, because you kind of get some different ideas and sometimes it doesn't pay off a lot because they just don't understand how to make a film. That's all it is. But here, when you have the backing of A24, like I said, they must be doing something right. So I'm very intrigued about this project. And I think the first thing I really need to talk about here is just the Australianisms in this film. The fact that you have an all-Australian cast apart from maybe one person, and the directors and writers are Australian. You get all these funny little quirks that only an Australian can really pick up on. Just to clarify, in previous videos I have said I'm from New Zealand, and just to really give you a clear kind of picture of who I am and where I come from, I was born in New Zealand and I moved to Australia when I was 3 years old. I'm 25 now, so I spent 22 years in Australia. Half my family is from New Zealand, half my family is from Australia. So I have a pretty good understanding of both cultures. But I probably see myself as more Australian just because I've been here longer. And this film just feels like a pure Australian film. There's not many great films that come out of this country. The ones that I have really enjoyed, I could probably count on one hand. It's just that few. I just can't get into the style of filmmaking a lot of the time because they don't try to do anything other than kind of what is expected from an Australian film. But, you know, films like The Babadook, The Nightingale, and now Talk to Me really try and appeal to not just Australian audiences, but people from all over the globe. And I think that this is going to strike a chord with an American audience, even though there is an all-Australian cast. But in this film, it was just so nice to see so many little things. I mean, for example, there's just a Telstra phone booth in one scene, and just something like that just really puts you into where these characters are. You kind of get a feel for it as an Australian. You know what certain things look like. The cars and the license plates and everything, all those small little details you don't really see in American film. And I think that is a key point to why I think representation really matters in film. You get only American films from Hollywood, and while that's great, I love all of so many of those films. It's nice every once in a while to get something from someone who understands where you are from. But enough about that, let's get into the actual film itself. Firstly, I think Talk to Me is truly just one of the great films of this year. It was so fantastic in so many ways. I've been in such a rut lately by seeing so many soulless films like The Flash or Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny that just feels so mid. And to finally get something that feels like it has so much passion behind it. It tries to do something interesting and unique. It has compelling performances. It genuinely wants to move you. I just felt that from the minute that this film started, and it was so refreshing and so nice to see. It reminded me why I love films, why I love this genre, and why A24 still reigns supreme, because Talk to Me is truly a fantastic horror movie across the board. I'm so surprised at the talent from the Rucka brothers. You know, hearing them speak and the way they act, you just couldn't really believe that they could come up with something like this. It's so nuanced, yet I think that it can still strike a chord with the general audience. You know, it's hard for me to recommend Midsummer to, some of my family members who just want to see something, I guess, a little more traditional in terms of its storytelling. Some of these films are experimental. They can be a little bit weird. They have themes that rub people the wrong way. That's why some people walk out of these films early or just really despise them and don't understand why they're so special to so many people. But Talk to Me, I think, strikes a chord where it really appeals to everyone if you're a fan of the horror genre. There are a couple of weird little things here and there that I think, oh yeah, that's why it's an A24 movie, but nothing insane, nothing that would just completely throw you for a loop. The story is really fascinating as well. On the surface, it seems like it follows a pretty traditional route in terms of a horror film. There are those themes of grief and possession and all of these things that we've seen before in other horror movies. But the spin on this is quite different to anything I've seen before. And I think that's why I think it will appeal to so many people, because it still manages to maintain some kind of security for someone who doesn't want to go into something completely insane, but it does enough things where this feels very different from just the run-of-the-mill horror film that you'd be getting in the summer. Going back to the direction, because I really think that is the main thing that sets this apart. The way that the camera moves is so dynamic. There's so many different shots that really put you in the shoes of the character in just some very interesting ways. And it's hard for me to imagine that this was such a small budget indie feature, because they do some really great things here that I would think would blow the budget out of proportion, but they don't. And that's the brilliance of it. It's really, really interesting the way that the Rucka brothers directed this film. This pretty much hit every single beat I wanted it to. The horror elements really scared me at times. There were one or two jump scares that felt a little bit cheap just because they've just tuned up the sound a lot, and that's what frightens you rather than the actual scene on display. But that happens far less than some genuine scares that will make you cringe. There are definitely some cringe-inducing moments in this, due to how horrific some of these scenes are. It really makes you feel pain in some ways, because once again, the direction is just so immersive and interesting. The whole concept of this hand, which I don't want to go into too much detail on because I don't want to spoil any major parts to this movie. I really want you to go in fresh here, because I think that's just the best way to experience this. But what they do with the hand is just really interesting, and in horror films, characters make some pretty dumb decisions. It's kind of common. A24 horror movies kind of forgo that a lot of the time. I think the horror characters are quite intelligent, but there is a motivating factor to why they are sometimes making a stupid decision. And that happens here in Talk to Me. And I really like that there is a real explanation here as to why they keep going back into the more horrific elements of this film, when they probably could have just missed it entirely if they just sat back and thought about it logically. But hey, we don't always think about things logically. When emotion takes hold, sometimes you make dumb decisions. And I think Talk to Me really hits that note extremely well, I think. Need to talk about the performances here because I think they're truly special. A lot of these guys are practically first-time actors, apart from Miranda Otto, who gives a great supporting performance. But I really want to credit Sophie Wilde here, who plays Mia, the lead in this film. Please put her in more movies. She is a fucking star in so many ways. Her performance just felt like that of someone well beyond her years. It felt like she had a shit ton of experience in her craft already. I just was blown away by her performance. Little nuances in the performance, such as facial expressions, her mannerisms, take a big part to this performance. And it really gets you on board with her character really fast. It's easy to sympathize with her, even when she's making some pretty terrible decisions that hurt people. And I just really like what they did here. And I have to credit Sophie Wilde here for just such a captivating, brilliant performance. It honestly is one of my favorite performances of the entire year. This obviously will not get nominated for an Oscar because the Academy is stupid with horror, but come on. I don't think there is going to be too many lead actress performances better than this year. It was truly special, really was. I mean, in terms of faults, there's not a whole lot, but there are a couple of moments where I think some scenes you have to suspend some disbelief, and it did come off like not too much thought had been put into certain elements. I really can't go further without spoiling it, but these are minor things. I'm not talking about grand scale revelations or anything like that. I love every direction that this story wants to go into, but it's just how a character might go from one scene to the next. It happens once or twice where it just felt a little bit clunky, and you feel those elements of a first-time filmmaker here. I'm really grasping at straws here for any kind of negative criticism because there really isn't much. Talk to Me is a fucking special film. It is one of my favorite films of the year. It is better than so much shit that has come out this year, and I am so happy to finally see a film with real vision and passion behind it. It just feels amazing, honestly. You really need to go see this. I cannot stress that enough. Go check out Talk to Me if you are a fan of horror. And if you're Australian as well, I think you'll get a really good kick out of it. Some of the humor just feels very Australian. And just those little visual motifs, I think, are just really cool to see as an Australian. It really makes you feel a lot of pride. I honestly love every major step that they took with this story. It was paced brilliantly, and every single moment just made sense to me. All the way from the beginning right down to the end, it just felt like every decision was thought out properly. They really gave a lot of time to writing this screenplay and connecting a lot of the dots, where when we get to the end of the film, it just feels so satisfying. And the cinematography as well, it feels kind of underrated in this film, and I think it will be for a lot of people as we look at the end of the year and the best looking films of the year, because this does have a muted color palette, which isn't the most attractive for a lot of films, but it works here. But it's not that, it's more the placing of the camera, certain silhouette shots and blurring certain characters that just really work here. It looks interesting, it's distinct, and it has a little bit more depth compared to something that just looks pretty, and I really like that quality about it. Overall, Talk to Me, I have to give a 4.5 out of 5. Truly excellent horror picture that, once again, I cannot stress this enough. Go check it out when you get the chance. I was lucky to see a really advanced screening here because it's just brilliant. A24 movies usually come out months after the American release date here in Australia, sometimes up to a year. I saw Pearl maybe 10 months after the American release date, and that was in cinema, and they're advertising, see it first at this cinema. Bullshit. Talk to Me, they actually played this first. I got to see this 2 weeks before the American release date, and that is so rare here, so I just have to cherish that, and it just felt really good to kind of get this really early look at just such a great film. Anyway, those are my thoughts towards Talk to Me. If you've seen the movie, or if you're going to see the movie in the future, let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Are you really excited about this movie? I hope I have lifted your anticipation levels for it, or even made you notice it, because it really is worth watching. We have this Insidious movie out. We have a couple of other horror movies that have come out. This is the one to see. This has genuine quality behind it. Don't go see something that just has some established IP name to it. Check out something original. This is that pick, 100%. Please go see this. That's all I have to say. I really want to go into more, but I don't want to spoil really anything for you guys. I really want you to enjoy this. Go in blind, have a good time. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.